when I've thought about what are the, I call them the 5 things that management teams and investors and board members don't get right. I think the first thing is that executives are frequently too busy. And I think sometimes board members ask for activities that just keep them busy. And the most recent article, cover article of HBR magazine was on the busyness trap. And so there's a need to slow down and think about what really matters. I think the second thing that's really critical is if you look at the failure rates, I mean, my God, 72% of all new products, fail, flop, fail to meet expectations. There's a Christensen study done that he and others did that said some 75% of new products fail to meet profitable, viable status and are pulled off the market. Another study that he and others did said, look, in 1 year, there were over 20,000 new products and only 92 reached 50 million or more of revenue and sustained that level of revenue in a second year. And then the final metric from CV Insights says, of the number one failure reason for startups is it's 42% of the failures is sure they solved for a problem, they just didn't solve for one where there was an unmet market need. And so when you look at those kind of failure rates, and this is, that's why there aren't more great companies, is these kind of failure rates are the norm. They're the majority. I did a webinar like a year and a half ago, and I did a poll question, and I asked 4 questions. Does your company have frank conversations? Do you understand your customers' unmet needs? Are you mapping out, testing, and validating your value proposition and your business model? 54% to 62% of the respondents said no to those various questions. Like, what are you doing? And so there's a bit of me that gets a little tart because, again, as I said, it's not like there's not a lot of smart, ambitious people playing in both the company management teams and the investor world. But like, why are you keeping conventional wisdom approaches when faced with those kind of failure statistics? I mean, that should be just like getting ice water thrown in your face. It's like, oh my God, we've got to stop doing what we've been doing. Stop being busy is one. Number 2 is be more curious and humble, because you have every reason to be humble given those kind of statistics. And that's where the innovator's DNA mindset of asking questions and really in welcoming, learning more and pulling insights from people. The third thing, and this, Roger Martin deserves serious kudos for this. He did a HBR video in the last year that's just rocketed into the millions of views. And his comment is, planning is not strategy. And so there's a phrase that's frequently used, we have to come up with a strategic plan. And I think this is a mindset problem that speaks to all sorts of challenges, because as he points out so clearly, and he's been hammering on this for a while, and I think what he's done so well in the last year is he's continued to advance his thinking that the rest of us desperately needed to hear, and that is that planning is activities under your control at the company. It's a necessary step at the right time. So it's how many people are we going to hire to do what? How much are we going to spend on this or that, R&D or manufacturing or sales? What kind of facility do we need? It's even could be regulatory plans and reimbursement strategy plans. He calls it a laudable list of activities. The key point being they're under the control of the company. They have nothing directly to do with the dependent variable, which is customers. And as he says so well, if you want to be successful, you need to have a strategy that compels action by customers that is in your favor. That's the whole point I was saying earlier about, executives are in the persuasion business because you have no control over customers. And as Peter Drucker has said, the entire purpose of your company is to create a customer. They're not going to buy anything from you and become a customer unless they first believe it's going to satisfy an unmet market need. So get it right. Then I think the fourth thing is what we said earlier about the assumptions. Really important, because what that does is that helps take you out of the strategic planning mindset and gets you really thinking about strategy issues and what has to be true. And then finally, I would say it's really getting go-to-market right. It's using something like the GTM roadmap as a way to get clarity and have a shared language amongst the team and the investors and the board. Something that I'm now pulling together is, when I call up CEOs, they respond like I used to respond to. Yeah, Richard, Kyle, we're fine. We got this all covered. No problem. And what do you say to that? Well, I've just spent all these years going into companies uncovering blind spots. And the kind of humorous part is that I got labeled as a turnaround guy for a while there, through about the 06, 1997 to 06 timeframe. And what I really was becoming, to go back to the Steve Jobs quote of, you can connect the dots looking backwards, I was becoming an expert on GTM blind spots. And so the challenge is that, people don't see their blind spots, but we all know companies and individuals have them. So I'm developing this GTM readiness self-assessment diagnostic that will allow teams, I call it, so when the executives say that to me, I say, boy, I sure understand that. And the last 10 have said that to me too. But by the way, they took this free diagnostic test and, oh my God, they were surprised that, because what it does is it asks questions about the 3x3 categories. And the expectation is that when it's done and ready to go in totality, you'll get a scorecard back that will be green, yellow, red for each of the 9 boxes. And it will tell you how ready you actually are. And that should create some interesting conversations.